leadership always from a positional leadership perspective. This is from across the spectrum, and one of my favourite times of the week to uncover the inspiring and innovative solutions, as well as those that are leading the way in multiple different parts of the food and fibre sector here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I'm your host, Sarah Perium, and it's my absolute privilege to bring you this collection of change makers that are driving the conversation forward and how we can do things differently. In your change maker this week, we're going to cover a broad range of themes, from jars of Manuka honey that are capturing the attention of Harrods in London, catchment groups making a difference in Taranaki, and how US consumers' perception of New Zealand in a post-COVID world have changed for the positive, as well as New Zealand leading the way in science, technology and horticulture. But before I let you know about the guests on this episode, I really want to stress the point that to tackle the huge questions around exponential change presented for our primary industries, we need to come together. So whether you are a farmer, a grower, a supplier, producer, student, researcher, entrepreneur, or established organisation working within the food and fibre space, the largest cross-sector event of the year is nearly here, E Tipu, the Bowman New Zealand Agri Summit, which is happening on the 11th and 12th of May, right here in Christchurch. It features 2 full days of 20 plus future-focused speakers, both national and international, and some very cool and interactive workshops. Also, there is the announcement of a online-only experience. So therefore, if you physically can't make it to Christchurch, you can still participate in these interactive panels, workshops, Q&As, and cross-sector networking, both online and in person. This is going to be the biggest food and fibre event of the year, and it's created to help Aotearoa's food and fibre industry become more innovative, sustainable, collaborative and profitable now and into the future. There's been an announcement of some new speakers that are up on the website now, so check out TIPU, and of course I would love you to be there, so I do have a special for you. You can use the word Sarah, SARAH, to unlock $100 off registration. This is going to be ending very, very soon, so make sure you head to etipu.boma.global and you can get your tickets now. Now, just in the last quick shout out, I do want to hear from you. A quick 2-minute survey, 5 multi-choice questions. All you need to do is text the word honest to 4040, and this is so that I can hear from you, the audience around Sarah's Country. You know, I want to be market-led in our decisions of what we are looking to potentially change on Sarah's Country. That can be more of what you are wanting. I want to hear and make these decisions crowdsourced with you. So that survey, if you text honest to 4040, only 2 minutes, so super quick, only 5 quick questions, you can win an Honest Wolf bag as well. And if you are in the South Island Agricultural Field Days at Kuwi this week, please come and say hi in the Farmlands tent Wednesday through Friday. I will be there, as well as our editorial producer Tessa Prentice. So keep an eye out for Tessa in the Farmlands tent, and we will be on search for next week's Changemaker show, or produced live from the Kuwi Field Days. So I'm really looking forward to bringing you that as well. So on this week's Changemaker on Sarah's Country, what could possibly make a 230 gram jar of honey worth $5,000? Well, a New Zealand made honey is selling for that in Harrods in London, and True Honey's chief executive Jim McMillan will join the show to explain the journey to that incredible value. Then, how are the Taranaki Catchment Community Groups making a difference? The chair, Donna Cram, will join us to explain. To close the show, what are our US consumers' perceptions of New Zealand now post-COVID? And are our New Zealand food and fibre brands taking advantage of the rise of e-commerce? Greenpurse Chief Executive Lisa Mabe Contopolis joins the show. She's an incredible lady with a lot of insight. But firstly, we're going to discuss how New Zealand's horticultural technology is placed internationally. And as part of the speaker lineup at Bowman Agri-Grow Summit, Dr. Ian Yule is going to give us a little bit of a highlight of what he will be talking more about at the event. Ian works for PlantTech Research, and he's going to share his wealth of knowledge as one of the world's leading agri-tech researchers. All that up next here on Sarah's Country's Changemaker.
This is Sarah's Country, produced in alliance with Farmers Weekly, the place New Zealand farmers turn to for a trusted source of in-depth agricultural journalism. Stay connected to the matters that matter most by subscribing to My Daily Digest at farmersweekly.co.nz.
Oh, nice boots.
Yeah, thanks. They're new.
Ben, you alright?
Oh, yeah, sorry, mate. Just meerkatting pretty hard, eh? Yeah, I just said to myself, Ben, work hard. You deserve new boots.
We have some incredible innovations in the horticulture sector featuring on Sarah's Country's Changemaker. But how is horticultural technology placed in an international scale? And what are some of those major scientific challenges that technology can help solve into the future? Well, as part of the speaker lineup for Airtipu 2021, PlantTech Research Director Dr. Ian Yule is going to join us to explain how New Zealand-based research and development organisation is specialising in cutting-edge artificial intelligence solutions. And Ian joins us now. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the program, Ian.
You're very, very welcome. Thank you for having me.
No worries. Well, and this is part of our ongoing coverage of the speakers of Airtipu. Ian, and I'm really looking forward to hearing. I mean, we do really like to talk about the fact that, you know, here in New Zealand, we are very innovative and forward-thinking in agri-tech, but globally, really, are we?
I think we're good at generating ideas. But I think we also need to be aware that if we're going to compete internationally, then we need to compete on international markets. And I think that's where it gets a lot more challenging for us. And, developing longer term businesses, developing partnerships that will, these things take a few years. And I think there are some very good stories coming out of New Zealand in terms of the agri-tech sector. But it is a bit patchy. And I think while there's a lot of starters, there's maybe not so many finishers in it, but it is a tough environment to operate in. But it's related to size of markets and so on. Those are all factors that matter.
So when it comes to producing a competitive advantage for our horticultural growers here in New Zealand, that is one thing, but producing agri-tech that is actually can transpire across boundaries into global markets, the scale size must be, as you just pointed out, is extremely difficult. So are we going about it the right way round?
I think there is, I think we're trying to, and I think people like Callaghan Innovation, for example, are trying to encourage not just that first wave of innovation, but also that business development, partnerships, etc. I think one of our own shareholding companies, Robotics Plus, is a good example where they've actually been in the game a long time and have partnered with overseas companies to do particular things. And there you might think that an overnight success is, but it's actually taken 10 years in the development. So these are companies that have put serious effort into developing relationships with overseas companies and so on. So I think we are getting better at recognizing that this is something we need to do more of. I think in the past we've probably been very quick to innovate and try and generate innovative ideas, but we perhaps haven't followed them through as well as we could. But I'm hoping that situation is beginning to change.
And a part of our future of producing food and fibre is very much under a microscope, and precision agriculture has certainly got a huge role to play in achieving environmental outcomes, as well as, of course, maximising yield to feed the world at the same time. Ian, can you tell us a little bit about your career and co-founding Hyperceptions as well? That's really fascinating.
Yeah, well, so my career, I suppose, is spanning a large number of years now, but I came over to New Zealand to do precision agriculture about 24 years ago. I'm working in that space, but the reason that I moved to PlantTech was really that I came to the realization that more and more the rate of acceleration in terms of the need for computer science was increasing. So, our sensors are becoming more complex. We're generating more data. We're more complex in how we do data analytics. And so we need better computer science. And so what I could see was the likes of myself working in a university environment, we were making incremental change, but we needed to make change faster. And that's what I saw with PlantTech, that what we could do is get a group together of AI experts that could really understood the technology first and foremost, and then we could apply that to horticulture.
So what does that look like in an example that you can give us?
One example is we're about to embark on a survey this week that will, it's actually through Hyperceptions, that it's an aerial survey technique that we use, a thing called a hyperspectral camera. I just sat down before the interview, and I think we're going to collect something like 180 billion data points. And so those are the sorts of things that have changed. And not only do we do that, but that's one source of data that we need to integrate that with others. But we also need to turn the information around relatively quickly. And we need to be, there is actually demand for high accuracy. So what Hyperceptions does was it was born from a joint project between Massey University and Ravensdown Fertiliser. And it was really around looking at hill country and could we identify soil fertility from what we see above ground. And so the sensor measures the vegetation, but can we interpolate what's happening in the soil from the vegetation above ground? And that's where the Hyperceptions started. So. Yeah.
And where are you at with that technology and the ability to do that?
Well, I suppose I'm a believer in the technology and a bit of an advocate for it. But in terms of what we can do is we can describe our environment in a huge amount of detail. So we can do things like, so what we want to do with some of our fruit crops, for example, is look at the link between the nutrition of the canopy, so what is its nutrient content, and the performance of the fruit, of the crop. So what is its yield? What is its storability? It's because obviously with things like kiwi fruit, apples, we export them. We need them to stay in the correct condition. So what we're trying to do is look at, well, how can we best prepare fruit to be, the ultimate in terms of its flavor, it keeps well, it performs exactly as we would like. Other factors in terms of the nutrition that we can do and the husbandry that we can do on the orchard, what can we do there that will actually ensure that happens? So it's really trying to create those sorts of links.
It's fascinating. My brain goes to the application of being able to map soil carbon. Could we go that far?
Yeah, I think there's various examples in the world that's shown how that can be done, and I think again there would be some it would be, I think, around interpolating what's happening above ground, looking at the landform, the things like digital elevation models. We can model then what the soil carbon would look like. There are other ways that we could measure on a more smaller scale, a physical scale. We could measure, in terms of carbon content and so on. All of those things are measurable.
Fantastic. Ian, I'd lastly like to talk to you about the key messages that you will be presenting on at Itipu.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of march of technology is still moving forward, and we're moving at a faster rate. I think things are getting more complex. We're having to use different technologies, better technologies than we've done in the past. I think what I would like to emphasize as well is to develop these sorts of technologies, we really need partnerships. It's a long-term game. It's not a 5-minute job to see what these things will produce. It is a 2-year task perhaps. But yeah, I think that's the sorts of message that I would like to give, is that there's a huge amount of possibility there, but it's we've got to kind of get serious about how we approach it in terms of making partnerships and working collaboratively with a lot of other people, which I think, in fairness to New Zealand, it's something that we possibly haven't been very good at in the past.
Yes, absolutely. I can agree with you on that last point there. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dr. Ian Yule, Research Director for PlantTech Research, as well as co-founder of Hyperceptions, speaking at Itipu Bowman, New Zealand Agri-Grow Summit in the Christchurch Town Hall, 11th and 12th of May this year. I have word on the street that tickets have sold already higher than the 2019 event. So if you want to be a part of that, be in that room with some incredible networking to therefore kick off some of those key collaborations, as Ian said. Make sure you head to itipu.boma, BOMA.global, and you can use the word Sarah still just slightly to get you $100 off your early bird ticket. But that will be closing very, very shortly. So I look forward to seeing you at the event as well. Coming up in Changemaker show this week, after the break, we're going to be talking to a Manuka honey company that's achieving jars of honey in London, selling for $5,000.
Catch the latest on the matters that matter most wherever you are. Listen to Sarah's Country on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple or Google Podcasts. Try asking Alexa or Siri. Play Sarah's Country on podcast.
One of the first things you learn when you live out here
is where to shop for the things you need to live out here.
like electric fencing,
or horse feed,
or bee suits,
children,
chook food.
Do you want a couple of these?
Or something stylish to wear. Not everyone's got stuff like this.
but at Farmlands we do, and then some.
So if you need anything to help you farm,
Grow, milk, dredge,
rear, come on in.
because we're out here too.
Well, for generations, farming and primary production have been the key pillars of the Taranaki economy, with a thriving and diverse rural sector that sustains over 10,000 jobs. However, farmers are continuing to look for ways to ensure the environmental, economic and social well-being of their communities is continuously looked after. So what is being done on the ground? Well, I have uncovered some fantastic work at a catchment level, and we're joined now by the Taranaki Catchment Communities Chair, Donna Cram. Welcome to Sarah's Country, Donna. It's a privilege to have you here. Now, could you start by telling us how you personally come to be involved?
The vision came from, we'd go to dairy environment leaders down in Wellington to the forum, and we were listening to Ewan Matheson and Edwin Marbonga talking about thriving Southland, and we were hearing lots of things, and I come back to Taranaki, and farmers were quite disengaged with what the future was, what was coming at us, and we as Taranaki Dell people knew what was coming at us, and so we had this vision to try and bring the cross sector. And I'm on an escalator program, and I stood up in front of Sam MacGyver and a few others and said I was going to bring this group of cross-sector together. And so I got home and thought I better. So that's how it started. 16 people from hort, beef and lamb and dairy all came together one night, and there was some really robust conversation about whether this was right for Taranaki. And we were in the Dairy NZ rooms with Richard Parks from Beef and Lamb, so it was true cross sector, everybody, you know, and it was decided we would carry on, and there was a few more discussions and discussions with Thrive in Southland after that too, but so we're here, we're doing it, and farmer-led, farmer-driven.
That's fantastic, because I was actually going to ask you if there was inspiration from Thriving Southland, and effectively for those who are listening or watching, there is catchment groups, individual rivers whereby communities come around them. They're called a catchment group, but there has been this new concept of an umbrella group to actually be that conduit between MPI funding and the challenges individual catchment groups face, and to see this roll out across Taranaki, but not only just from a dairy perspective, but across sector, is amazing, Donna. Well done to you. I'm so proud of the work that you're doing. But I really would love to talk around, how far farmers in Taranaki have come in embracing the concept of catchment groups.
So we've got 13 groups, and it's been really quickly. Like, we've known about it happening for a year, but we only just got funding via Venture Taranaki from MPI about 2 months ago, or November, but we couldn't do anything during summer. So we've been under a bit of time, but we've had our facilitator is Trish Rankin. So she zooms when she gets going, and we've just looked for really strong community groups. So some of these groups are around water and fresh water, but some are communities. And, you know, there's one thing I've learned in all this, and Trish will say every group, community connection was really important. We don't realise, I think, what we've lost lately. And in our group here, we've got 33 farmers in a predator-free group, and we've had some great get-together. The 2 meetings we've had have been really great, and we've got the oldest at 83 and the youngest at 21, and women and men. You know, it's really diverse, lots of new ideas. The young farmers are full of amazing ideas. You know, so it's great. It's good. It's a lot of fun, and it's exciting.
I think that is, you've nailed it on the head there, because we continuously within the primary industry formulate silos around groups that we're involved in, but to collectively have it around a geographical location that everyone's passionate about, it's just transformational, isn't it?
Yeah. And people trust each other. Those communities, they trust each other. And they might not know everyone, but they'll know some of those people, you know? And so it just starts conversation. And we've got one owner that doesn't live here, but she's been down to 2 meetings, or they've been down to 2 meetings, and they came in on Zoom the other day. They're really passionate about it, even though they can't live here. You know, they're passionate about it. So it's inclusive. It's nice.
When you talk about the funding via Venture Taranaki and from MPI, what are some examples of where that funding's going to?
So we've only got initial facilitator funding. So we were given $50,000 to employ a facilitator. And because I didn't have those skills, Sarah, and we have the most amazing facilitator, but don't tell the rest of New Zealand. But and so that's how it's began, and it's about. So Trish goes into that community group, and she talks about she asks them, what are the opportunities, what are the challenges, what would you like your community to look like? And what are the strengths in your community? Because we've got lots of skills in these communities. And so when the groups start answering these questions, then so much comes out. And then in the second meeting, she'll formulate a plan with them. And that's the plan that will, in the end, go to MPI. And hopefully they'll see the merit in helping us with this.
It's absolutely incredible, and I liked how you were discussing there about every single group wanted to have more community connection, community involvement. What does it look like where it's bringing rural and urban together around a similar area, similar conversation, and an understanding with each other?
So I'm just thinking, so the Warrior group, I think they've got sort of a mix. Most of the groups aren't that mix of urban, rural, but I know Warrior, they were talking, so they're doing things like getting, Liam's trying to get internet at the local cricket club, croquet club, so that they can all go and watch rugby together. And he's trying to get a coffee machine. I mean, these sound really simple things, but where there used to be the pub and everyone went for a beer, now everyone goes for a coffee. But, so it's changed. But I know Rata Pico, they were talking about lifestylers as well and around the lake and how they could all work together to make it a greater place, a nicer place to be.
Oh. It's so inspiring, and it definitely is so fitting to be on this program. You guys are making some incredible change, and I just wanted to highlight just about the work that yourself and Trish are doing. What has been those elements, particularly for you personally, Donna, to realise that you have the ability to make change?
One person doesn't make. I think it's just connections. And if I wasn't in Federated Farmers and Taranaki Dairy Environment Leaders, this couldn't have happened. But I've had backing from both, and the president of Feds, Mark Hooper, he's just kind of helped me all the way because I'm quite new as well, and so I've had really good support and Dairy NZ and some people from there and Beef and Lamb, and it's just about connecting with people, and when we find that we need something, who do we need to connect with to get that, or who do we need to connect with who to help them? I think that's what it's about. So my why is about connecting communities, but values based. Just good, honest. You're saying open hearts, open minds. Well, that's what I try to do as well.
Oh, thank you, Donna, for bringing that up. And even just within the last 12 months, how far we have come, and how the connection through story is really making a huge difference. I really genuinely appreciate everything that you are doing, Donna Cram. You are doing an amazing job. Donna there is the chair there of the Taranaki Catchment Communities. And of course, as I always say on this show, if there's anyone that's inspiring you'd like me to make that connection with you, that could help speed up a project you're working on, just get in touch with me, sarah@sarahscountry.com. Now, lastly on the show, what do the Americans think of us post-COVID? Well, it could be for the positive. Green Purse PR Chief Executive Lisa Mabe Contopolis is going to join us to explain in particular, is New Zealand food and beverage companies making the most of e-commerce and more? All that up next on Sarah's Country.
This is Sarah's Country. Join the conversation. Have thoughts on an interview? Or have you got questions you want answered by a future guest? Let us know. Email sarah@sarahscountry.com.
Australia and New Zealand are home to some of the world's most innovative farming pioneers. Zematic is proud to partner with farmers who are committed to leading the way in sustainable water management. The Trailblazer Sustainable Irrigation Awards celebrate sustainable irrigation management, irrigation-driven improvements, waterway protection and environmental stewardship. See how our Trailblazers are leading the way at irrigationtrailblazer.com/winners.
Well, the one thing I definitely enjoy every week on Sarah's Country is uncovering guests for you that are achieving some incredible outcomes. And this week we have a company based in Dannevirke that has sold over 200 jars of its honey for almost $5,000 New Zealand a jar. It has a unique Manuka factor of 33. And this New Zealand-made honey is from True Honey Company's range of high-quality Manuka honey that has been snapped up by Harrods. So why is it worth so much compared to other honey? We welcome our next guest, True Honey Chief Executive Jim McMillan. Hi, Jim. This is an incredible achievement.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Yeah, we're certainly pretty very proud of, I guess, what the team have been able to achieve. And I guess through some, very good branding with the marketing team, I guess just really, giving the high grade Manuka honey the respect it deserves. So I guess part of the reason why the price, $5,000 for a 230 gram jar is just really relative to the, the scarcity of the product. So there's only firstly, I guess I'd say it's the highest grade Manuka honey that's ever been made that we're aware of, that's been certified through the UMF Association. So there's only a very, very small amount of it ever been made, and I guess we were fortunate enough to produce it ourselves. So the team worked very hard to try to, I guess, brand it and in a way to really give it the respect it deserved, I guess. So.
For those who are listening or watching along, Jim, who are unfamiliar with the UMF numbering process, could you explain, what qualities the level of 33 is going to have for the human body?
I can explain a little bit around, I guess, the UMF 33 as far as, I guess, the medical benefits. We just need to remember that we are selling it as a food product, so sort of unable to make any direct claims around from a medical perspective. But I guess to put into context what 33 UMF means, or more specifically, I guess 1,900 MGO. So MGO is the compound that was found to be responsible for a lot of Manuka honey's unique beneficial properties, and they found that the MGO was responsible for that. So that's really an independent laboratory test that can determine the milligrams per kilogram of methyl-gloxyl present in that honey, where I guess UMF on the other hand is a trust mark really, that really encompasses not only the MGO but a number of other parameters as well, to really give, I guess, customers the confidence and assurance that they're getting exactly what they're paying for, really. So
I find it really fascinating that you've been able to achieve, 2,500 pound jar, 230 gram jars of honey, and it's still deemed a food product. I thought for that sort of type of product, must have been in like a nutraceutical or medical type product. So that just explains the market awareness around UMF.
Yeah, yep, for sure. Like there's certainly been an increasing awareness and demand, I guess, for high grade Manuka honey. So as much as we're selling it as a food product, very well aware that, commonly being used for numerous different, health issues. I guess it's viewed very strongly by a lot of cultures around the world. I guess just the value and the benefits of very high grade honey, and I guess in more recent times and more specifically Manuka honey. So I think it's a great thing for New Zealand Manuka honey industry as that sort of awareness and demand continues to grow for the higher end MGO ratings, really. So.
Can you tell us a little bit about the hives and how you go about accessing them in remote locations around New Zealand?
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to. I guess True Honey Company, we work pretty well right throughout the North Island, right from the very top, pretty much North Cape, really. We place our first hives at the beginning of the season and right down to the top of the South Island. So I guess we've really tried to specialise and really focus on, I guess, the production of high to ultra high grade Manuka from remote locations. And I guess we've also, as part of that, we've developed a number of very strong partnerships with, landowners of some of the highest quality Manuka resource around the country. and those partnerships are obviously intricate or essential part of our operation. And then in addition to that, I guess the parts that are in our control as well is around, I guess, where we place the hives within each particular area. So we use helicopters to fly all of our hives in and all of them out, and that's primarily done to allow us to place them at precisely the right time, right stage of flowering. So when the bees are placed on the blocks, they're collecting nothing but, or virtually nothing but pure Manuka nectar, and also allows us to place them right in the centre of the concentration of the Manuka resource, instead of maybe right on the edge of it, where the bees could have a large selection of other nectar sources they could be gathering as well. So our team have worked very hard over the last 6 or 7 years around really specialising in the production of that high to ultra high grade Manuka, and so that's what we're good at, and we continue to push the boundaries of what can be achieved, I guess, with some really smart thinking, planning, and use of innovation and science as well. So.
Yeah, and I mean, flying hives in by helicopter at the ultimate time, it certainly does stack up when you're achieving what you're achieving, but at the same time, you're showcasing to all of us in producing food and fibre the opportunities that are there. Jim, I'm really fascinated in value creation around products that can achieve different levels of price, but could have the same name. So, and you said at the start that you invest heavily with your brand team, your marketing team, but what is the fundamentals in achieving the highest premium perception around a product over something else with a similar name?
Well, I guess, firstly, probably note that from a personal perspective, I've come from a, agricultural background and always been very, very passionate about, New Zealand primary products, really. And when I first became involved in the Manuka honey industry, felt that Manuka honey wasn't really being given the respect it deserved, I guess, relative to other products and the price that was being charged for it. So certainly, really wanted to do everything we could to really showcase the product and obviously build a very strong brand story in behind that as well. So the first part, I guess, of achieving that is really we need to produce the product in the first instance. So we essentially produce every drop that we sell under our own brand, so we can provide the customer with absolute assurance around the authenticity of that product right to every step in the value or production chain. And then secondly, I guess, we took a very consumer-centric approach to our brand development. So, held a number of workshops around the globe, really, to get feedback from consumers around what they really wanted to see. And I guess some of the feedback that came through that was certainly the use of sustainable packaging materials. So I wanted to see the honey put into a glass jar relative to the use of PET jars. And then they wanted to be able to purchase direct from the producer, and also wanted to ensure that, minimal use of any synthetic type materials in the packaging. So we've really focused very hard on ensuring that all materials wherever possible that we use, as sustainably produced as possible. And then that's really been the essence and the foundation of the development of the brand, really. So, and I guess resulting products that have come out of that. So.
Fantastic. And do you believe that in the age-old saying that, should the tide rise, it shall bring all boats, and this achievement that you've achieved here for True Honey Company, and the perception being at $5,000 a jar for such a small amount, will only help bring up the Manuka industry here in New Zealand across the board?
I certainly really hope so, and as a company we're very committed to wanting to do our part, I guess, for the wider industry and I guess the good of New Zealand, and think that, hopefully, I guess an example of the 1,900 NGO reharvest that you referred to earlier that we did released into Harrods a month or so ago is a good example, I guess, of what can be achieved. Some very significant value add or value creation through listening to our customers around the globe and developing products accordingly, really. So yeah, I think it's a good example of what could be achieved in other primary products as well, Sarah.
Yeah, and that's what I really love, the inspiring nature of the story, Jim, is I think that this will resonate with a lot of listeners into so many other ways. Jim, it'd be fantastic if you could spend some time with our strong wool industry. I'm sure you can teach them a thing or two about value creation. That's Jim McMillan there from the True Honey Company. And thank you so much to Colin Willis-Croft from Farmers Weekly for uncovering that absolute gem. Now, next up on Sarah's Country, how are Taranaki farmers working with their catchment communities to lead transition to a more sustainable future? Taranaki Catchment Communities Chair Donna Cram will be with us to share how they're making a difference.
This is Sarah's Country, produced in alliance with Farmers Weekly, the place New Zealand farmers turn to for a trusted source of in-depth agricultural journalism. Stay connected to the matters that matter most by subscribing to My Daily Digest at farmersweekly.co.nz.
Well, back when I launched Sarah's Country at the beginning of 2020, the thought of the world changing the way it has when I interviewed our next guest wasn't even on our radar at that time, and how considerable consumer habits in their buying and purchasing decisions would have unfolded over the period that this show has been around. So just over 12 months. Absolutely incredible. There's been a focus increasingly on buying local post-COVID, and so the biggest concern is how can New Zealand stay prevalent to the United States, particularly the female Whole Foods markets? How has being locked up at home for most of the year affected the buying habits and behaviours of this market? It's an absolute privilege and pleasure to welcome our last guest on the Changemaker episode this week, Greenpeace Chief Executive Lisa Mabe Contopolis. Welcome, Lisa. It's been as I said there, lots of water has gone under the bridge in a very different direction than last time we spoke.
Oh, so much has changed. Yes, it's been a long, rough winter. It's been a long, rough year. It's been especially bad for those who, were sick. I'm fortunate enough to have been well this entire time, so things are fine for me and for a lot of us. But yeah, we've went through so many different phases of being bored, sick, frustrated, lonely. But now that it's springtime, I feel like people's attitudes have changed dramatically already. We just had spring a couple days ago, but you can already feel the optimism. I think people are getting out in the world a little bit more, starting to spend more money as well on things. I think things are looking up. We're going to try to be as positive as we can because we need all the positivity we can get.
It's great. It is a great place to start, actually, around those key factors that have happened in the US market. Of course, that is the biggest one, is that we've had, consumers locked in their homes with their families for long periods of time. You also have had a Biden administration, a change of your parliament come in. It's just been incredible, the general feeling of how people are. How are they feeling in terms of their sense of wealth? That's probably my biggest starting point.
Well, it's been hard for a lot of people and will continue to be hard financially for some time to come. It's kind of a case of the haves and haves not. As I understand it, there's been a class of folks who seem to have been kind of living their best life, so to speak, whilst still at home, of course, and having some constraints. But a lot of people have kind of been able to take advantage financially and invest and spend and buy a whole lot more for their households and investing and all sorts of things. So it's a little bit of both at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. So therefore, this connection to buying everything online, it was already a major trend prior to COVID, but only massively amplified.
Yeah, American society's had a tremendous shift to everything virtual, everything online. We're all virtualed and onlined out on many things, from having children having to do school virtually, people working from home and doing all or most of their meetings virtually. People are pretty zoomed out, so to speak, with exception to a few things. And one of those is online shopping. The sheer convenience of it all, I think people really grew accustomed to just how convenient is it to be able to just click on Amazon or wherever you're shopping, and an hour, in some cases, it shows up on your doorstep, especially for things like essentials for the household that you don't necessarily feel like making a special trip for and spending 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours out of your day. It's a huge benefit to be able to shop online for things like that. Although people are, according to the research I've conducted virtually, of course, across the past several months, they do miss getting into the in-store environment, and they've certainly missed out on a lot. So for example, some of those more premium categories like wine, honey, red meat like lamb and beef, those sorts of things are harder to see online, even though a lot of our websites, show the product as clear as day and you can shop super fast and easy. There's nothing like being able to just discover something on the shelf yourself, especially when it comes to shelf-stable items like meat or seafood. You just want to see that sometimes instead of trusting someone else to do it for you. And you'll oftentimes forget about some of the seasonal or new or perhaps new to you sorts of products that you would only really discover inside of a store, like at a, like seasonal end cap, for example. Right now, we've got a lot of spring things in stores. I actually just went to Whole Foods Market today in person. I've been going this whole entire time, just fewer shops than normal, but I took my daughter, who's 4 years old, to the grocery store for the first time in over 1 year. And that was a big event. I mean, it was exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you're wanting to take time to savor every aisle, I could imagine.
Yes, and when you go in person, you're seeing so many more opportunities for impulse purchases. Like, for example, just bringing my daughter along today, I was buying like a couple little toy-oriented type things at the grocery store that I normally wouldn't buy if I were shopping online. You're kind of relegated to what were your past purchases and kind of just following and buying it, basically the same single thing over and over, which adds to our boredom at home, which is not great.
Yeah, so that is one thing that you've brought up, is around the sense of discovery is really stripped out of an e-commerce environment. Are you seeing any really leading, innovative online ways of creating a sense of discovery?
Well, I have seen a lot more virtual sorts of experiences. So where brands like LaCroix, which is a sparkling water, I, for whatever reason, just love that brand and kind of see everything that they do online. A lot of the content that they would share on their website, if you follow them on social media like Facebook and Instagram, kind of brings to life and shows you how you could use some of their products even at the in-home environment to still enjoy them and add a little splash of color and pizzazz to your day, if you will. So I think brands have definitely got a bit more creative in terms of showing how to use products in the home environment, which maybe they didn't do quite as well before. And that's super smart, always really, because a lot of times, especially food and fiber type products are used in the home environment. But now when you're really trapped, or have been trapped, I should say, for the past year, that's especially relevant. And trying to incorporate ways to do make a new tradition at home, for example. I know a lot of people have told me in some of my virtual interviews that as a result of being chained to their desk all day long, stuck on Zoom call after Zoom call, they have like a little snack tray or a little snack area by their desk. I actually have one. I call it my protein section, and it's all it is beef jerky or other sorts of meat jerkies at my desk, because if you're just stuck call after call and you're starving and you don't have time to eat a proper proper meal, at least you have that. So there's new little sections of the home that have been carved out. One in particular that comes to mind just from a pure lifestyle perspective is exercising, because most people stopped going to the gym, at least for a while. And as a result, we've had a huge surge in sales of Peloton, Nordic Track, all these sorts of big exercise equipment brands. So there's oftentimes either a whole entire room that's now a gym that wasn't before, or just a little corner, like a little yoga corner, those sorts of things. So it's interesting that brands, very savvy brands, have shown consumers, here's how to utilize our product or our lifestyle that we're promoting inside your home in a fun sort of way.
I was speaking to a venison marketer at an event that I was at last night, Lisa, and the hopes are pinned on the rush back to the restaurant, as well as the fact that venison has had to pivot into e-commerce, but was very hard to build a database from the middle of COVID when they were predominantly in food service. Do you see the US restaurant trade just surge ahead and all of our woes will be gone?
Well, I don't know about all of the woes being gone, but for sure, I've heard so many different marketers and researchers say things that indicate, oh, this cooking at home, this cooking from scratch sort of trend is here to stay. I really don't think so, and I really hope not as well. I mean, to some extent, people learned new cooking skills, so I'm sure they will continue to use them. But make no mistake about it, people are eager as can be to get out in the world again, to go to restaurants, to go on vacation, to literally go anywhere. Even just the grocery store is exciting, as I said earlier. So yes, I am quite certain the masses will be dining inside restaurants just as quickly as they possibly can. And they already are to some extent in some areas where they're able to do so in a somewhat safe or outdoor environment.
And what about the rise in sort of localism, sort of, food nationalism? We talk about it a lot on Sarah's Country over the last 12 months because it is a big fear of ours. With 95% of our produce exported, we can't afford to have our markets, turn inwards, and yet at the same time we understand why, to have patriotism to local producers. But at the same time, how have you been working with the clients that you work with under Greenpeace PR and of that, many New Zealand companies to ensure we're not locked out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very real concern because the buy local movement has been for a while and continues to be a big part of society. When you walk into a grocery store, for example, you'll often see buy local messaging. But according to a lot of research that I did, which was February 2020 when I concluded this, so it's a tiny bit outdated at the moment, but I have been doing some more virtual research this past year to kind of keep an update and keep a pulse on what people are thinking in terms of how they perceive food and beverage products from countries like New Zealand. I also studied perceptions about Australia, Iceland, and Ireland because they all have a somewhat similar commonality along the clean and green sort of messaging. But yeah, there is still a hunger for the best quality foods, no matter where it happens to come from. And there seems to be a distinct understanding in certain categories, especially more shelf-stable categories like wine or honey or supplements and vitamins, for example, which is something that's a huge interest right now amongst Americans as they're trying to boost immunity and stay as healthy as possible to stave away the virus. They tend to care a little bit less about country of origin. In many cases, don't even bother to look at it at all. We know that products come from all over the world. It's not a shock that, when you look on the back of something, it says made in, various countries all over the place. But when it comes to New Zealand, I have asked specifically, now we're not quite post-pandemic, I suppose, but we are mostly post-lockdown, I suppose you could say, hopefully. How have your behaviors or perceptions or opinions changed perhaps in terms of buying local versus buying foreign, as I say affectionately? And most people that I've spoken with, although they are keen to support local businesses, I think they're thinking of local more in terms of kind of helping save their local restaurants that they know and love. That's what seems to come to mind when they think of food and drink and local is more food service, which is good, especially good for, producers from New Zealand who are selling things like wine and honey and dairy and red meat. We want people to not mind that it's coming from New Zealand. And a lot of folks have told me that they are open and have been trying new sorts of products. And for them, for Americans, sometimes new to them are products like lamb, for example. Actually, we had a lot of restrictions at the grocery stores all over the country on beef products, on meat products in general, beef, pork, chicken, and so forth. And when you go to the grocery store, you could only buy like one per item, but all the beef would be gone immediately. But then towards the beginning, you would see like bricks of minced or ground lamb. And I've been talking with a lot of butchers as I've been kind of doing a little road tour on behalf of some of my New Zealand clients to understand how people have been purchasing at the meat case during the pandemic. And a lot of shoppers have told the butchers, and they've also told me as well, that they have tried products like lamb for the very first time, simply because it was sometimes the only thing they could find at the meat case. So instead of buying ground beef, as they may normally do, they opted for lamb. Turns out they liked it, and it wasn't as hard to cook as they thought.
Fantastic. So an unintended consequence for the benefit of our New Zealand producers. Thank you very much for organising the interview with Chris Kirsten from the Savoury Institute that we had on Serious Country last week. This is with regards to the Land to Market program and the ability to certify regenerative practices. Lisa, I'm not sure if you've been keeping up to play with the general rural news and opinion around the regenerative term in New Zealand. I'd love your thoughts on New Zealand's opportunity and how small that window is for us to certify our farming practices and position us with this trend in the US.
Yeah, it's growing by leaps and bounds. I mean, honestly, as a result of now, I consult to the Land to Market program, which is part of the Savoury Institute. I mean, every single week, new brands are coming on board saying, I want to be a part of this movement to source regenerative, which is just sourcing products that are coming from land that is verified as regenerating to make the planet, to make Mother Earth better. We've done a lot of research through, third-party labels and attributes and that sort of thing. I have, at least, that indicates consumers really want to make the planet a better place and want to vote with their dollars to purchase from companies who are doing just that. Consumers definitely do not understand the nitty-gritty of regenerative agriculture, as we all know. They don't need to know all the details unless they are a farmer, a rancher, a grower, producer. They're not going to possibly understand all of that, but they don't need to. But they do need to be familiar enough and value it enough that they are willing to seek it out and pay for it ultimately at retail stores or grocery stores, wherever it may be. But yeah, it's having a tremendous amount of growth, and I think it's something that we're just starting to build a foundation for now. It's probably going to fall in line similar with some of the labeling programs and attributes that eventually consumers will start proactively looking for, similar to like a non-GMO project verification, for example.
Wonderful. So it's just an absolute trend that New Zealand needs to continue to focus strongly on. What would be any closing messages you'd want to send to New Zealand producers on the direction of any trends you're seeing over the next 12 to 18 months?
Well, I know that New Zealand has a lot of special products and stories to offer the world, especially the American market. I would encourage New Zealand brands to try to incorporate its lifestyle into its brand messaging, because people, here have been stuck on their couch for a year. They haven't been able to travel. And for those more health conscious foodies who also consider themselves jet setters, globetrotters, whatever you want to call them, folks who actually get out and travel the world, which are a considerable amount of, New Zealand is very, very high on their list. And just as soon as we can all get well and travel again, I'm sure they'll be heading over your way pretty soon. But in terms of, just the general market here in the US, whether they ever get to travel to New Zealand or not, selling the New Zealand lifestyle of pure, clean, and green, I love that message. It's so uplifting and encouraging. The folks down in New Zealand are absolutely beautiful and have lovely personalities. It's something that we need a healthy dose of right now. I think of that especially for food and fiber products that have kind of a health story to tell, because we're all a bit on a health kick at the moment, trying to stay healthy or get healthier so that we can remain well as long as possible.
Yeah, fantastic messages. Thank you so much for joining us, Lisa, and we hope the year ahead for you is one that hasn't been anything similar to the last.
2021 is going to be much better than 2020. It's guaranteed.
Thank you so much, Lisa Mabe, Contopolis there from Green Purse PR, based in Maryland in the US, representing a number of New Zealand brands, including Atkins Ranch Lamb, as well as many others from around the world. She's absolutely fantastic. And as I said, one of my very early podcast episodes when I launched Sarah's Country. So it's a privilege to catch up with her again. Now, thank you so much for listening through Sarah's Country's Changemaker this week. And if you are at the South Island Agricultural Field Days in Kuwi this week, I will be at the Farmlands tent on Wednesday and Friday. And Tessa will also be there. So if you do want to pop by, she will have the ability for you to fill out our short survey, so you can go in the draw to win out the amazing Honest Wolf bag. As well as we will be live streaming from Wellington on Thursday night, and that will be across on the New Zealand Farm Environment Trust Facebook page and website. I'll be hosting the Supreme Award winner of all of the regional Farm Environment Award winners from the last 12 months. It will be a great night of celebration of absolute pure change makers that are making incredible inroads environmentally around the country. So do tune in Thursday from about 6 o'clock on the New Zealand Farm Environment Trust website and Facebook page as well. That's all from me. Make sure you get in touch, Sarah at sarahscountry.com. In the meantime, have a great rest of your week and weekend wherever you are around the globe. Take care of yourself, your loved ones. Ka kite anō.